Father Papademos to come before us for prayer.
Good morning. Let us pray. Lord, help us to remember that the things in this life are temporary. As your children, we are in this world, but not of it. And our focus should stay on eternal things. Lord, even when we have trouble in this life, we can stay encouraged, because in eternity we will have overcome the troubles of this world by our faith in you. Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing for the flag salute led by Ms. Norma Torres. All right, let's do that one more time. Let's do that one more time, and in unison. Can we get some mic over there, please? Thank you.
It's the beautiful kids at the top. Ready, begin.
Very good. Thank you so much. Very well. We'll have the reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Wednesday, May 19, 2010. The Assembly met at 12.
Mr. Calderon moves and Mr. Garrett seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentations of petitions, there are none. Introduction of reference of bills, there are none. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Message from the governor, there are none. Message from the Senate, there are none. Motions and resolutions, Mr. Calderon, for what purpose?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, members, I request unanimous consent for Assembly members Chesborough, Torres, Yamada, and Calderon to have guests and photographers on the floor today.
Without objection.
Also, I request unanimous consent for Caballero, Ng, and Assembly Member Lowe to speak on adjourn in memory.
Without objection.
On committee-to-committee referrals pursuant to Assembly Rule 96, SB 518 be referred from Local Government Committee to the Rules Committee.
Without objection.
Also, when we get to the third reading file, I request unanimous consent to permit Ms. Yamada to take up her item, file item 63, ACR 158, out of order.
Without objection.
And finally, at the request of Ms. Yamada, I would like to remove file item 151, AB 2163, from the consent calendar.
Clerk will note. Recognize the absence of the day. Speaker Pettis, Harkey, Delatorre, Valines, Nava, and Evans. Mr. Nielsen. I believe Ms. Evan has visitors here today from Redwood Middle School. Are they here yet? We'll move to special guests from Ms. Torres and Mr. Chesborough. We will recognize Ms. Torres and Mr. Chesborough at the Speaker's Emeritus Karen Bass desk. Ms. Torres.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. On behalf of the members of the Assembly Select Committee on 911 Service, Mr. Amiano, Chesborough, Nielsen, and Mr. Torlakson, it is my pleasure to present a special resolution declaring this week as California 911 Education Week, and today as 911 heroes and Dispatchers Day. To accept this resolution, we have in the chambers none other than Mr. Tim Brown, who is the international chairman for 911 for Kids. Many of us know him as a former standout wide receiver for the Oakland and Los Angeles Raiders. He was also a 911 NFL Pro Bowl player and the 1987 Heisman Trophy recipient, and a new inductee to the College Football Hall of Fame. Also with us today are Elise Kim, Executive Director of 911 for Kids, and 9-year-old Isaac Rosser, who saved his mother's life by calling 911 and following the guidance of dispatcher Amy Christian. They are both from Eureka. I also want to recognize that this week is Emergency Medical Services Week and acknowledge Tom Wagner from American Medical Response. In the back of the chambers are our 2010 hero dispatchers, Shawanda Schaffer and Anthony Martin. They are joined by other outstanding members of the Public Safety and Emergency Response. And in the gallery, we have Mr. Vega's third grade class from William Land Park Elementary School, located right here in Sacramento. Thank you.
Thank you for your service, and thank you for visiting us in the chambers. All right, we were recognizing Mr. Nielsen from Mr. Nielsen's desk. Members?
Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly, it is a pleasure here. I get to introduce somebody, but I must acknowledge a kind of inconsistent policy of this institution related to introductions here on the floor and acknowledgments and presentations of resolutions. That said, the Tehama County Young Marines are here in the gallery today. They're from Red Bluff, California. We had some here last year that we acknowledged also in the gallery. They are an organization for youth 8 through high school. They promote mental health and physical development of its members, particularly drug-free lifestyles and discipline in their personal lives. It's a very significant accomplishment of these youth. In October of '09, the Tehama County Young Marines were among the distinguished honorees at the Pentagon with the 2009 Secretary of Defense Fulcrum Shield Award. They have just recently been named the National Unit of the Year among 300 national units. Please stand, the Tehama County Young Marines.
All right. Welcome to the Capitol, and thank you for your service. Members, we're prepared to take up the consent calendar. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2694 by Assemblymember Blumenfield, an act relating to instructional materials.
Clerk will open the roll. All those vote desire to vote. 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 Clerk, all those vote desire to vote. All those vote who 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 desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Reopen the roll. No, you didn't vote. All those vote who desire to 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 vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 57, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 1709.
Ayes 57, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 1944.
Ayes 57, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 2036.
Ayes 57, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 2151.
Ayes 57, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 2213.
Ayes 57, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 2394.
Ayes 57, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 2404.
Ayes 57, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 2541.
Ayes 57, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 2629.
Ayes 57, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 2717.
Ayes 57, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 2762.
Ayes 57, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 1667 with urge.
Ayes 57, noes 0. On the urgency, Ayes 57, noes 0 on the measure.
Assembly Bill 2671.
Ayes 57, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 2683.
Ayes 57, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 2703 with urge.
Ayes 57, noes 0 on the urgency. Ayes 57, noes 0 on the measure.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 80.
Ayes 57, noes 0.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 82.
Ayes 57, noes 0.
Senate Bill 838.
Ayes 57, noes 0. We're going to go, members, we're going to go to third reading. File item 63, ACR 158 by Ms. Yamada. Clerk will read.
Assembly concur in Resolution 158 by Assemblymember Yamada relative to Women Veterans Recognition Month.
Ms. Yamada.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. You know, I rise very rarely to present recognitions of any type on this floor. So bringing forward ACR 158 simply highlights this important issue for me, as well as I hope all of you who are attending our meeting today and those who are visiting in the gallery. ACR 158 designates May as Women's Veterans Recognition Month to honor women veterans' military service and highlight the challenges that they are facing upon their return home. Members, may I have your attention, please, just for a moment? Thank you very much, because I know that all of you in this chamber have people in the military serving now.
Please continue
Thank you
with
very
your
much.
resolution. Thank you.
Women have served in the military in this country since the early 1900s as nurses and as other support personnel. Since then, they have regularly been deployed overseas, serving in various capacities as mechanics, pilots, and missile placement operators. More recently, women have been serving in the highest numbers ever in Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. A total of 13% of those being deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan are women. As a result, there is a rapidly increasing population of women veterans who are coming back with serious mental and physical health issues that disproportionately affect this population. They are coming back with military sexual trauma and other physical health issues that must be addressed by all California and our nation. A recent study conducted by the California Research Bureau with the help of the California Commission on the Status of Women, entitled California Women Veterans, The Challenges and Needs of Those Who Served, also brings to light these growing problems and growing needs upon our health and other systems, delivery systems in our state. Therefore, members, I'm asking that we recognize Women's Veterans Month here in May and ask for the first roll to be open for co-authors.
All right, members, the first roll will be for co-authors. We'll open the roll for co-authors. This is for co-authors, members. Clerk will open the roll. Members, this is for co-authors. This is for co-authors, members. Clerk will close the roll. Clerk will note 59 co-authors. We'll have a voice vote on the resolution. All those in favor signify by the normal sound of aye. Any noes? Ayes have it. Resolution is adopted. Ms. Yamada.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. On my own time, I would also like to take this opportunity to introduce a special guest. I would like to introduce...
One second.
Yes.
Members, let me just ask that you respect the presenter, the member presenting her guest, and we will take as much time for you to collect yourselves to get order. Thank you, Ms. Yamada.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Ms. Barbara Ward, who is the Deputy Secretary of the Office of Women and Minority Veterans at the California Department of Veterans Affairs. She is a Vietnam-era veteran and served as an officer in the United States Air Force, in the Nursing Corps from 1972 to 1974 at the Military Airlift Command in Illinois. Deputy Secretary Ward is responsible for ensuring that issues important to women and minority veterans remain a priority in the planning and implementation of public policies. Her primary goal is to increase the utilization of available services at the federal, state, and local levels by women and minority veterans. She was appointed to serve as a member of the Advisory Committee for Women Veterans in September 2008 and will serve as chair of the committee's Health Subcommittee in 2010. Please join me, members, in welcoming Deputy Secretary Barbara Ward, and I would like to invite members of the Veterans Committee, and those who support our veterans to join me in the rear of chambers for some pictures. Thank you very much, members.
Thank you. Welcome to the chambers. Move to file item 60, AB 1747 by Ms. Galgiani. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1747 by Assemblymember Galgiani and others, an act relating to high-speed rail.
Ms. Galgiani.
Assembly Bill 1747 is a reintroduction of last year's AB 733, which merely seeks to maximize the number of California-based jobs that will be created for construction for the high-speed rail project. 600,000 jobs will be created by the project over the life of the project, and with the $2.25 billion we just received in federal stimulus funding, along with $2.25 billion in state matching funds, the state will receive 90,000 jobs. 9,000 of those will be within the next 2 to 3 months for the Transbay Terminal alone. AB 1747 simply authorizes the authority to consider the creation of California jobs as an additional factor when awarding contracts for the high-speed train project. I've worked with Assemblymember Nilo and the Republican caucus to address their concerns raised in Policy Committee, and will take further amendments in the Senate. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 All those vote desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll and tally the votes. Ayes 53, no 0. Measure is adopted. Move to file item 64, ACR 110 on amendments by Ms. Conway. Clerk will read.
Assembly concur in Resolution 110 with amendments by Assemblymember Conway.
Ms. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These are small amendments, technical in nature. I just respectfully ask for your aye votes.
Seeing and hearing no discussion or debate, we'll have a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor of the amendments signify by the normal sign of aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Amendments are adopted out to print and back on file. Move to file item 65, AB 2120 by Mr. Silva on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2120 with amendments by Assemblymember Silva.
Mr. Silva.
Mr. Speaker and members, this measure and these amendments strike a balance between the burdensome regulations and consumer protection. The amendments allow renters to opt in for copies of the mobile home park residency law for management. These amendments were suggested in the Policy Committee, and they will remove all known opposition. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, we'll have a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor signify by the normal sound of aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Amendments are adopted out to print, back on file. Move to file item 75, AB 2389 by Mr. Gaines on amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2389 with amendments by Assemblymember Gaines.
Mr. Gaines.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker and members, the amendments are a result of negotiations between the CMA and the sponsor, Aetna, to address CMA's concerns voiced in the Policy Committee. I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, we have a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor signify by the normal sign of aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Amendments are adopted out to print, back on file. Mr. Gaines, are you prepared for file item 78, AB 1837? On amendments, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1837 with amendments by Assemblymember Gaines.
Mr. Gaines.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker and members, the amendments are the result of negotiations between the Department of Insurance and the sponsor of the bill, and will address the concerns that were raised when the bill was heard in the Policy Committee. I ask for an aye vote.
All right. We'll have a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor signify by the normal sign of aye. Any opposed? Amendments are adopted out to print and back on file. Move to file item 76, AB 2164 by Mr. Norby. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2164 by Assemblymember Norby, an act relating to the Political Reform Act of 1974.
Mr. Norby.
Mr. Speaker, this is my first bill to actually make it before this floor, and I ask for all my colleagues' attention and open-mindedness in support of AB 2164. AB 2164 is about fairness. It's about reestablishing a common standard applying to all elected officials. It is about clarifying an anomaly of the law and ending a double standard. The 1982 Levine Act limits appointed special district board members to a $250 contribution from vendors. This is fine. This act, these officials do not run for election and should not be using their position to raise funds to run for other offices they may seek. However, this law is currently being applied to elected board members who may happen to sit on boards where only some of their colleagues are appointed. Now, there are only 8 such mixed boards in the state, most of them water boards. One of them is in my district, in my county of Orange, the Orange County Water District, where 7 members are elected at large and 3 are appointed. Elected officials on mixed boards should not be singled out for special treatment under the law. Election laws should apply equally to all elected board members. Now, this AB 2164 passed with a 5-0 bipartisan support in the Elections Committee. I appeared personally before the Fair Political Practices Commission and secured a neutral position from that body. So AB 2164 has no known opposition, not even from the FPPC. And we have letters of support from water district boards from Orange to Monterey counties, and I ask my colleagues for their consideration and their affirmative vote on this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Amiano.
Thank you. Mr. Norby, this is your first bill?
Yes, it is.
And do I understand from your comments you're endorsing waterboarding?
I'm endorsing water boards.
Oh, I see. Just checking.
Thank you.
Mr. Nastandi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question of the author.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Norby.
Without objection.
Thank you. I understand it's your first bill. I'm not going to question you on that. But you did mention you were going to be, or you asked members to be fair and open-minded.
I did,
now,
meaning they will vote yes for it.
Sir, now, are you going to be practice that same routine to be fair and open-minded when we talk about resolutions, wasting time on other things? Or do you commit to be fair and open-minded?
I do commit to be fair and open-minded. I usually lay off of them unless I think they deserve comment.
Well, I would appreciate. I'll be fair and open-minded.
And as a fellow Norwegian American, I would like to say
that is true.
That we did not occupy the floor's time in recognizing Norway, which was last Monday.
That's true. Thank you.
Mr. Nilo. No, Mr. Solario.
I don't think I look like Mr. Nilo.
No, he's going to give a great speech.
Assemblymember Norby, is this your first bill?
It is, sir, from our common county of Orange.
Mr. Norby, did you ask me if I was on the water district in the past and if I had questions or concerns about this bill?
I did ask you privately, and I know you'll express those now publicly.
Yes, I will. It's an honor for me to help my colleague from Orange County in his first bill. I would tell you that I was a member of the water district myself for 3 years, and I'm a good example of how there were two standards on that board. I was appointed by my city council to the water district, so I didn't need a campaign for being on that board, whereas others on that board needed a campaign to very broad, large constituencies. This would allow them more flexibility to be able to communicate with their constituency. And in fact, many problems we have with our water boards is people don't know what they do. There's a lot of question and a lot of concern about the money spent, the roles, the responsibilities. This will allow for more communication with these boards, with their electorate, and I think it's a good common sense. The assembly member was also able to get FPPC from a no position on the original bill to a neutral or no position, and that in fact is a success as well, so I do ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Arambula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assemblymember Norby, if this bill is about fairness and about reducing or eliminating double standards, can you explain how the bill has gotten this far?
Seeing and hearing no further debate or discussion, Mr. Norby, would you like to close, sir?
Yes, sir. This bill does require a 2/3 majority vote. It is a clarification of our often complicated, complex, and confusing campaign finance laws that not even the FPPC is opposing. I ask for a 2/3 aye vote. Thank you.
All right. All debate having ceased, clerk will open the roll. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 50. Clerk. Oh, my apologies. Yes. Clerk will close the roll, tally. Oh. All members vote, desire to vote. Members, all members vote, desire to vote. All members vote, desire to vote. Members, all members vote, desire to vote. All members vote, desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 55, noes 0. Measure is adopted. Move to file item 80AB 2336 by Dr. Fuller. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2336 by Assemblymember Fuller, an act relating to the Delta.
Dr. Fuller.
Speaker and members, AB 2336 requires the Delta Stewardship Council, in the course of developing and adopting the Delta Plan, to direct the Delta Independent Science Board to conduct an assessment of stressors in the Delta in addition to the State Water Project and the Central Valley Project operations. Stressors to be evaluated would include, but would not be limited to, impacts of invasive and non-native species, water quality impairment, and predation on native species. I want to thank the chair of the Water Committee and his staff for working with the sponsors of the bill and myself on this measure. AB 2336 has support on both sides, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
Seeing and hearing no debate discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 51, noes 3. Measure is adopted. Move to file item AB 2218 by Mr. Fuentes. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2218 by Assemblymember Fuentes, an act relating to restitution centers.
Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assembly Bill 2218 is a reintroduction of a previous bill, Assembly Bill 807 from last year, which was vetoed. The only change to AB 807 that we made is the removal of the mandate to reopen two restitution centers, which was the reason for the veto. The restitution center model is an example of being smart on crime. It is based on employment that pays for restitution, as well as the cost of program operating expenses. Specifically, it allows certain offenders to serve their sentence in a Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation restitution center instead of prison, where the inmate is required to work during the day to earn money to pay victim restitution and help defray the costs of his or her housing. This bill merely expands eligibility to allow for an increased but still appropriate population of inmates. Specifically, it increases the maximum sentence allowed for placement in restitution centers from 3 years to 5 years. It maintains the existing prohibition on inmates with serious violent priors or offenses requiring registration as a sex offender and those with drug sales convictions within the past 5 years, and it gives priority placement for cases where there is an individual victim. In conclusion, members, this is a win-win bill. It's for victims and courts helping them actually recover the cost from restitution which folks are owed. The state can recognize a savings of about $63 per inmate per day if we adopt this measure. With our prisons bursting at the seams, there couldn't be a more timely bill. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 48, no 0. Measure is adopted. Move to file item 89. 1 second. Members, we have Mr. Nilo, who has guests on the floor we'd like to address. Mr. Nilo? Nilsen. Mr. Nilsen?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have with us present today some folks who've come a very long way to be here with us. The Wairika Adventist Christian School from Wairika, California, with 14 students and 10 of their chaperones. They are a wonderful group of kids, wonderful values. Acknowledge them, if you will. Thank you for coming, folks. And
welcome to the Capitol. All right, now we'll take file item 89, AB 2508 by Ms. Caballero. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2508 by Assemblymember Caballero, an act relating to housing.
Ms. Caballero.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Members, I am very pleased to present AB 2508 today. This bill deals with a housing issue that has really created some conflict and problems from rural communities. A number of years ago, this legislature passed what has been affectionately termed the Mullen densities, which increases the density at which cities should create affordable housing units. And what's happened is that those Mullen densities have been taken and placed into our bond requirements, and it's specifically for the infill projects that all of us seek to correct in our inner cities. And as a consequence, many of our communities are designated as very high urban areas. The designation is urban or metropolitan, and we're misidentified based on our population base. And as a consequence, many of the smaller communities and many of the rural communities cannot build to the densities that are required by the Mullen densities. What this bill will allow is for that city that has been misidentified or that cannot build to those densities to be able to petition Housing and Community Development for a redesignation. And this allows them to at least go through a process where the particulars of their city can be analyzed. It can be reviewed whether they should have to build to these very, very high densities and give them an alternative. This bill is supported by the League of California Cities, California State Association of Counties. It passed out of the Assembly Housing Committee and the Local Government Committee with unanimous bipartisan support. There is no opposition. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 60, no 0. Measure adopted. Without objection, we'll move to motions and resolutions, and we'll have Mr. Berryhill to acknowledge his guest. Mr. Berryhill.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members. I'd like to acknowledge the leadership Stockton students that are visiting the Capitol today. These are Stockton's future leaders, and they're here visiting us. So let's give them a big hand. They're right up here. Thank you.
Future members of the Assembly. All right, move to file item 95, AB 2022 by Mr. Gaines. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2022 by Assemblymember Gaines, an act relating to property insurance.
Mr. Gaines.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker and members, for this opportunity to present AB 2022. AB 2022 would make it easier for California families to see for themselves if their homes are underinsured prior to a catastrophic event by making the required insurance disclosure forms easier for homeowners to understand. More Californians will be able to take proactive steps to insure themselves from a potential devastating wildfire, flood, or earthquake. This bill is sponsored by the California Department of Insurance and is supported by United policyholders and has had no opposition. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote desire to vote. All those vote desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote desire to vote. All those vote desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 57, ayes 58, noes 0. Measure adopted. Move to file item 96, AB 1775 by Mr. Furutani. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1775 by Assemblymember Furutani, an act relating to public schools.
Mr. Furutani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Members, I bring before you AB 1775, but before I address the bill, wanted to share with you last night at Sacramento City College they had their graduation. And as a part of their graduation, they honored a group of 80-year-olds, actually some of them were 90, second-generation Japanese Americans because of a bill we passed off of this floor that conferred honorary degrees onto those that were put in camps during World War II. Their education's taken from them and cut short. Interestingly, I'm sure at some point in time, when you look at that chapter of American history during World War II, someone has to ask the question, why did everybody just go to camp? Why did they allow themselves, because most of the 110,000 that went were mostly Japanese Americans and American citizens. Well, not all of them quietly went. 4 individuals challenged this in the Supreme Court. The last challenge, Mitsui Endo, actually overturned the camps and closed them. But what happened was one individual named Fred Kuromatsu, after getting the evacuation order, defied the order and was represented by the American Civil Liberties Union, and they went all the way to the Supreme Court to fight this case relative to their civil rights, and I'm speaking of Japanese Americans during this very dark chapter in American history. Well, during that time, all of the 3 court cases, Fred Kuromatsu, Gordon Hirabayashi, and Min Yasui, were denied by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled that it was constitutional to put American citizens in concentration camps during World War II. Well, during all of those years, after finding and appealing and then being defeated in court, they had in the 1980s the Coram Nobis case, which reopened the case led by Fred Kuromatsu. Fred Kuromatsu, represented by a legal team of young Japanese American lawyers, Gordon Hirabayashi and Min Yasui as well, challenged the Supreme Court ruling. And what happened was they then they vacated the ruling by the Supreme Court with this Coram Nobis case, and as a result of that, along with Brown versus the Board of Education and a couple of other constitutional cases are discussed and studied in law schools throughout the land. AB 1775 establishes a Fred Kuromatsu Day of Civil Liberties in the Constitution, an opportunity for people to use this issue as an education moment to show people the importance of the need for the Constitution and our civil liberties to be not taken for granted, but to be fought for and looked at as something that needs to be reaffirmed and reestablished on a regular basis. During this current time, with what we have seen in the state of Arizona, it couldn't be even more appropriate or timely, where people don't have to walk around to prove that they're Americans or have their papers and then be able to be stopped unceremoniously and unconstitutionally by law enforcement or any government agent and then having to prove that they belong. So the Fred Kuromatsu Day is going to be an opportunity for schools, not just law schools, but schools to really use it as an opportunity not to just educate around the issue of Japanese Americans. Actually, that frankly will be secondary. What it's an opportunity to do education around is civil liberties and the importance of the Constitution of the United States. This went to the Education Committee, passed out unanimously, and I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Calderon.
Very briefly, obviously this measure is not going to have too much trouble getting out of the House, but I really do think it's important for the reasons stated, not only in terms of what's going on in Arizona, although that's the primary reason, because right now it's easier to stop and detain an American citizen than it is a terrorist. I think we need to constantly remember that if we do not protect our rights, we will lose them. And if you think it's not going to happen, there have been bills that have been passed, local ordinances, state statutes in other parts of the country, some and policies. One individual not firing anybody that doesn't speak English in some southern state. Or even here, an ordinance in San Diego requiring landlords to check the documentation of any one of Hispanic heritage. This is not a Republican or Democrat issue. We can disagree and we can fight amongst each other because we have the right to do that, and we have to protect those rights every day. So I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Ms. Hayashi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I am pleased to rise in support of AB 1775. I'm a co-author of this bill and believe that proclaiming January 30th as Fred Kuromatsu's Day of Civil Liberties in the Constitution is an important and appropriate endeavor. Mr. Fred Kuromatsu was a longtime resident of San Leandro, which I represent, and his family, including Mrs. Fred Kuromatsu, still lives in San Leandro in Alameda County. While we have made great progress in areas of civil rights and equality, we remain constantly challenged to uphold these ideals and defend these values. When these trials come, we are able to look at the past and be inspired by courage. Fred Korematsu's lifelong belief in civil liberties shows us how important it is to protect our constitutional rights and to stand up against injustice. And he never gave up, knowing that this case was not about just one person. It was about the rights of all Americans. I want to thank Mr. Furutani for authoring this important legislation. I urge your aye vote today.
Thank you. Mr. Block.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is history, but civil rights and racial profiling are unfortunately as real today as they were back in the 1940s. Mr. Korematsu's case represents the troubles of many during that era. In San Diego, there were 2,000 Japanese Americans during the early 1940s. Many or most were victims of the same fate as Mr. Korematsu. Ironically, one San Diegan named Ben Sagawa was deported to Arizona, to a camp in Arizona, where he lived as a child. Finally being released from the camp at the end of the war, he found employment with a chemical company, became a farmer, enlisted in the Air Force, and after retirement established in the San Diego community of Bonita an American History Society devoted to the history of Japanese Americans. So as a co-author, I'm honored to join Mr. Furutani in urging the passage of this resolution. It will provide for our students for generations to come a teachable moment about wrongs done in our past and hopefully wrongs to prevent in our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Yamato.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Just quickly, I wanted to note that I believe a school in my district in the city of Davis retains the national distinction of the only one named in the country after Fred Korematsu. So I'm not sure what day of the week January 30th is in 2011, Mr. Furutani and members, but perhaps we can join with the celebrations and the teachable moments that are occurring at Fred Y. Korematsu Elementary School in Davis. And just on one further note, in the naming of that elementary school in the city of Davis, that engendered great controversy in our town. We unearthed an old city ordinance that was passed by the City Council of Davis in 1943 that called for not only the support of the internment camps by the City Council of Davis, but at the cessation of hostilities, the denial of any Japanese Americans to ever return to the city of Davis. So a community that now prides itself, I think, on much liberal thought at one time in 1943 was certainly capable of the same sort of racial hostility as we hope to prevent today. Thank you very much, members. I rise in support of AB 1775.
Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. It is with honor and pride that I rise in support of the Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution, and to say that I'm reminded that the place for fairness and justice has been and still remains the courts of the United States of America. And while, in fact, as it was revealed in this case, where the Solicitor General did suppress the truth, that truth that has been crushed to the earth shall rise again. And so it is with this great motivation of pride that I support this day, because the courts still remain the place where fairness and justice take place. And it is clear to me that in 1983, when the courts reversed their decision, that the inevitable was true, that in fact all citizens of America are created equal, and this bill, this AB 1775, is an example of how we can strike a blow towards inclusion and freedom for all American citizens. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Mr. DeVore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise in support of AB 1775. I think it's very important that we look at the historical record and see that under Franklin Delano Roosevelt, citizens of the United States of America were denied their freedoms without due process. That's what this is all about. I think it's also interesting to note for the historical record that it was the Republican governor of Utah that refused the internment order. So there was some pushback that occurred against this injustice. I generally agree with the debate this morning. However, I was greatly discouraged to hear two mentions of what has recently happened in Arizona, where the state simply passed a law that recapitulated federal law. In other words, simply restated federal law. So if you've got a problem with Arizona, then clearly you've got a problem with federal immigration law. I further would like to point out that what we're talking about in Arizona is enforcing federal law with individuals who are not United States citizens. And therein is a gigantic difference between this bill, which seeks to honor a U.S. citizen who fought against an injustice, something that clearly was a violation of his due process rights, and somehow comparing that to a state seeking to simply enforce U.S. federal immigration law, I find nonsensical and, in fact, beneath the sentiments expressed by this worthy resolution. Again, I rise to support AB 1775.
Mr. Swanson.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of AB 1775, and I would like to commend Mr. Furutani for bringing the bill up. And I wanted to just take a moment to agree with some of his comments. The intent of some of his comments was to recognize that each generation has a responsibility to address the question of injustice, and where we can easily agree when we can look back on history and identify a wrong and say we would have done it differently, and we should always celebrate those that have taken the courage to fight against injustices during their period of time. But it's harder for us to recognize injustice when it's right in front of us. And so that's why the reference to Arizona was important. And it's important for us to look at the question of injustice and address it. And if it's within our time of responsibility, then we have a responsibility to respond. So I support this resolution, and I thank the author for reminding us of all of our responsibilities as we continue to do the job for the people of this great state.
Thank you. Mr. Gaines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I too rise in support of AB 1775, and I've got a personal story that I was doing some research on my grandfather, who was the mayor of Berkeley in the late 30s and early 40s, and he had risen up in opposition of the internment of Japanese Americans, and I think that was a courageous act on his part. And I think we do well by recognizing when there have been errors in past history here in America, that we recognize that and we move forward, and we're better for it as a nation. So I rise in support, and thank you for bringing this forward.
Ms. Saldana.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, this is really living history. At San Diego State this week, students, well, now seniors in their 80s and 90s, who had been students in 1942, received honorary awards as a result of a bill passed just last year by Mr. Furutani, AB 37. And I think of it in the same way when we honored our survivors not that long ago, who went through horrendous circumstances in Europe, that this is a process. This isn't something that happens overnight. These young people and their parents and their grandparents who were placed in these internment camps, it happened suddenly, but there was a steady drumbeat of events that took place leading up to that executive order that history now judges to be unjust. And when we look at the circumstances around us today, we have to ask, how will history judge us? How will history look back on this time of economic hardship, of a nation at war, of concerns over things that may have nothing to do with the reality of people's lives who are being affected today? So I want to stand and recognize the success of the bill from last year, the fact that 80 and 90-year-olds who lived far away from California are now coming back to receive honorary awards in recognition of their sacrifice from so long ago. And the stand that we take in this hall, in this chamber, has impacts on families all over this country and in ripple effect all over this world. So I think it's very important that we support this today and that we do have those conversations about how our practices as state legislators will have impacts on people looking generations ahead. So I'm very happy to stand in support of this, and I think in a broader context, we do need to have an historical view. When a 90-year-old gets an award that he should have earned 70 years ago because of the action of a simple executive order, it makes us, at least it makes me realize the significance and the impact that my words and my legislation has on many, many more people that I may never meet. So I rise in very strong support of this measure.
Mr. Furtani, you may close.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much, members. I really want to acknowledge my colleague Marty Block. It was constituents in his district that came to him, they came to me, and together, and I appreciate your co-sponsorship. I also want to acknowledge Mary Hayashi, not only because of her co-authorship, but because her husband was one of those young, bright-eyed lawyers back in the day that was a part of the legal team that helped with the Coram Nobis cases at that particular time. And I really appreciate the bipartisan support for this bill, but I would acknowledge that the comparisons relative to what happened to Japanese Americans and what's going on in Arizona is in fact relevant. I mean, where you have to, no matter what you look like, if you can be stopped because you're driving a nice car in the wrong neighborhood, or you can be stopped because people think you're this race or that race, or you can be stopped because people think they want to check your immigration status. That's why this is so relevant and current today, because in America, you should not have that happen. So we shouldn't have to walk around wearing no stinking badges relative to proving that we belong. So thank you very much. I urge and I vote. I appreciate the support that everybody shared today.
Seeing no further questions or debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 63, no 0. Measure passes. We're going to go back to file item 93, AB 2216. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2216 by Assembly Member Fuentes, an act relating to works of improvement.
Mr. Fuentes.
Speaker, good morning. Assembly Bill 2216 addresses the so-called double payment issue for general contractors who pay their first-tier subcontractors, and in some circumstances, those contractors fail to pay their suppliers, thus resulting in the general contractor having to pay twice. All subcontractors are required to file a 20-day preliminary claim notice, and this bill requires that at a minimum, those notices be filed before the job is completed, before they can file a claim against the bond. The bill has received bipartisan support with no votes, and for those subcontractors who are not otherwise supporting the bill, we are continuing our discussions. The bill is supported by the Associated General Contractors of California, of San Diego, California Legislative Conference on the Plumbing, Heating and Piping Industry, Construction Employers Association, and the National Electrical Contractors Association, California chapter. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 63, no 0. Measure passes. File item 97, AB 1982 on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1982 with amendments by Assembly Member Amiano.
Mr. Amiano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Speaker and members, the amendments at the desk would simply eliminate a requirement in the bill where the LAO would need to make a report. A previous report of this type cost approximately $3 million. In talking with the Appropriations Committee, Education Committee, and my sponsor, I've decided to remove this cost from the bill. And this bill is AB 1982, charter school bills.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We do oppose these amendments and request a roll call vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Hagman is asking for a roll call vote on the amendments. Mr. Amiano is asking for an aye vote. On the amendments, Mr. Hagman is asking for a no vote. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Amiano is asking for an aye vote. Mr. Hagman is asking for a no vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 24. The amendments are adopted, out to print and back on file. File items 98 and 99 pass and retain. File item 100, AB 2523. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2523 by Assemblymember Egan, Act relating to apprenticeship.
Mr. Eng.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 2523 would permit state-approved apprenticeship programs to offer certification training under their general control. Currently, electrical trainee programs have been primarily but not exclusively provided by community colleges. Unfortunately, in many areas, trainee programs are not offered at the local community college or not offered every semester. This has created serious difficulties for workers who cannot work in their field without being enrolled in a course. This measure closes a loophole in existing law that allowed electricians to avoid important continuing education requirements. This measure is supported by the California Association of Electrical Contractors and also sponsored by the Western Electrical Contractors Association. This measure passed both the Assembly Labor and Appropriations Committee with no votes. Respectfully request an aye vote.
Mr. Gaines.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise in support. This came through our Labor Committee. It's a great idea to speed things up for more job creation in the state of California. I'd like to thank the author for moving it forward.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 61, no 0. Measure passes. File item 101, pass and retain. File item 102, AJR 38. On the amendments, clerk will read.
Assembly Joint Resolution 38 with amendments by Assemblymember Caballero.
Ms. Caballero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I take up AJR today for purposes of amendments. The amendment is insert a whereas clause that focus on the tremendous impact on unemployment and other hardships in rural farming communities that have affected farm workers, ag-related jobs, small businesses, and farmers. I respectfully ask your aye vote on the amendments.
Seeing no further questions or debate, and without objection, we will take a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted, out to print and back on file. File item 103, AB 2458. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2458 by Assemblymember Saldana, an act relating to taxation.
Ms. Saldana.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, AB 2458 is a way to allow small businesses to delay payments on penalties when they fall behind in paying their annual taxes. It gives them 60 additional days to make that penalty payment, and in this depressed economy, many small businesses struggle. They fall further behind, so this extension will be a chance for them to make up the difference and keep in business and keep employing people during those 60 days. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 66, no 0. Measure passes. File item 104, AB 2490 on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2490 with amendments by Assemblymember Jones.
Mr. Jones.
Madam Speaker, members, AB 2490 makes sure that employers and businesses in the state of California are protected from contracts requiring them to resolve disputes in other states at great cost to them. Today I'm offering a small technical amendment to resolve concerns raised by the Association of California Insurance Companies. I ask for your aye vote on the amendments.
Seeing no further questions or debate, and without objection, we will take a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted, out to print and back on file. File item 105, AB 2572. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2572 by Assemblymember Bradford, an act relating to charter party carriers of passengers.
Mr. Bradford.
Madam Speaker and members, California airports are some of the busiest airports, seeing millions of passengers each year. Whether these passengers are traveling on business or leisure, they have an expectation that our airports will provide safety both within the terminals and on airport grounds. This safety includes travel from the airports by taxi cabs, rental cars, or modes of prearranged travel. AB 2572 seeks to provide better enforcement, protection, and safety to these travelers when exiting airport properties by giving airport and law enforcement enhanced tools to police the prearranged services on their properties and areas where these services are offered. This bill responds to the concerns by airports around the state that having difficulty targeting operators of vehicles that are acting as taxi cabs but licensed as prearranged travel services. This should be a great concern, especially each member of this House who travel on frequent basis. These drivers are operating off-grid with no way to verify their DMV records, track any maintenance performance on the vehicles, or determine their level of liability insurance. AB 2572 fixes this problem. The goal of this bill is simple: to increase public safety in our airports. AB 2572 has wide support from the Greater California Livery Association, California Airport Council, San Francisco Airport, California Bus Association, and the Taxi Cabs Association. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 53, noes 2. Measure passes. File item 102, AB 2667. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2667 by Assemblymember Hill.
Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. No opposition and bipartisan support on AB 2667. Current law requires hospitals to notify parents about existing state law regarding child safety seats. AB 2667 simply expands this notification to include information about where parents can go for free inspections for their child's safety seat. Over 90% of parents and caregivers believe their child safety seats are installed correctly. But the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration research shows that 7 out of 10 children are improperly restrained, putting them at risk for serious injury or death in a crash. Motor vehicle crashes are the leading cause of death of children 3 to 14 years of age. Many of these deaths can be prevented through the proper use of child safety seats. Child safety seats can reduce fatal injury by 71% for infants and by 54% for toddlers. This bill also reduces reporting requirements, hospitals, clinics, and birthing centers by clarifying current law to specify that parental notification need only occur once per child instead of every time a child visits a health facility prior to age 6. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 58, noes 5. Measure passes. File item 107, AB 2698. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2698 by Assemblymember Block, an act relating to public social services.
Mr. Block.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. AB 2698 will protect California's foster youth from becoming victims of identity theft. Foster youth are particularly vulnerable to identity theft because many times they pass through multiple homes and multiple schools, each time subjecting their identifications to theft. At the age of 18, many foster youth discover for the first time that their identity has been stolen when they try to rent an apartment, obtain a credit card, pass an employment credit check, apply for student loans, and they are refused. The Identity Theft Resource Center in California, in San Diego, California, estimates that 84,000 California children who are foster care system participants are victims of identity theft. AB 2698 is similar to AB 2985, which was authored by former Assemblymember Bill Mays and signed by Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger in 2006 as part of a bipartisan foster care program. Unfortunately, AB 2985 has never been implemented due to ambiguity of implementation and questions that have arisen since passage. AB 2698 clarifies those ambiguities. It does 3 things. First, it requires that when a foster youth turns 16, County Welfare Department or State Department of Social Services request reports from the 3 national reporting agencies about the youth's credit. Number 2, if a problem is reported, AB 2698 mandates that the situation be referred to an agency that assists victims in identity theft. And number 3, AB 2698 empowers that agency to take remedial steps on behalf of the foster youth to clear their record. Our office has received letters of support from the California State PTA, California State Association of Counties, California Probation Officers, County Welfare Directors Association of California, and many others. There is no opposition on file, no significant costs associated with this measure. There have not been any no votes in committee. I ask your support.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 66, no 0. Measure passes. File items 108 through 110 pass and retain. File item 111, AB 1753. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1753 by Assemblymember Hall, an act relating to slot machines.
Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 1753 would increase fines on non-casino businesses who are in possession of unlicensed slot machines. There is absolutely no opposition to this measure. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 60, no 0. Measure passes. File item 112, AB 1817. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1817 by Assemblymember Arambula, an act relating to corrections.
Mr. Arambula.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, it's my pleasure to present to you Assembly Bill 1817, which will save the state approximately $100 million every year. It saves $100 million a year by making changes in the management program for the health utilization that is currently being used in the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. This will make appropriate use of our limited health care dollars. It will make sure that prison costs are kept down, and it will help move us towards ending the federal court's receivership of medical care. This bill passed both policy and appropriations fiscal committees on unanimous bipartisan votes, and I would respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 66, no 0. Measure passes. We have a couple of announcements of guests. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, if you would join me in welcoming some students from my district, the New Life Christian School from the fine city of Norco, California, in the gallery.
Welcome to the chambers, and Mr. Calderon, you also have a guest.
Yes, Madam Speaker and members, I do have somebody at my desk. It's my oldest son, Ian Calderon. Like Mr. Furutani observed, isn't it great that your kids tend to look more like your mom than the dad?
Clerk will note. File item 113, AB 1913. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1913 by Assemblymember Davis, an act relating to retirement.
Mr. Davis.
Speaker and members, today I am presenting 1913, which requires the California Employment Retirement System, CalPERS, Board of Administration to adopt a policy that sets a goal for using emergency investment managers to manage 10% of its portfolio. Required by January of 2012, CalPERS to report as specified on the emerging investment managers of the entire portfolio. It will require CalPERS to report to the legislature on its plan for increasing participation of emerging investment managers to 10% of its actively managed portfolio. And it will define an emerging investment manager as a qualified investment manager managing an investment portfolio of $10 million and $1 billion. The California Public Employees Retirement System is the nation's largest pension fund. As provided in the California Constitution by Proposition 162, California Pensions Protection Act of 1992, the boards of California's public retirement systems have the fiduciary responsibility for investment of monies and administration of the system. We will continue to honor their responsibilities. It is important to note that CalPERS Board of Administration should deal with the commitment it has already shown towards achieving diversity in this area. We hope that this commitment continues, and we welcome their input. This bill's prescribed method for inclusion is to require measurement of the participation of emerging investment managers and have California's pension funds set their own goals for using these firms in a manner consistent with the law, consistent with meeting their fiduciary obligations, and consistent with their investment objectives. This bill is supported by the California Teachers Association, and Madam Speaker, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further, Mr. Blakesley.
Madam Speaker, members, I have to rise in opposition to this measure. Stanford has recently reported hundreds of billions of dollars of unfunded liability in CalPERS, in addition to self-dealing and illegality and corruption in dealing with monies that our state workers will rely upon in their retirement years. And for us to be trying to micromanage the political nuances of issues as opposed to reforming this dysfunctional body, I think is inappropriate in this time of great economic calamity. I urge a no vote. I think this is legislation moving in the wrong direction. This body should be trying to reform this investment pool so it starts doing what should be its core job, which is ensure there's money there for future retirees of employees of the state of California. I urge a no vote.
Mr. DeVore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Just yesterday, we learned that CalPERS is asking the state of California for an additional $600 million to offset shortfalls. This $600 million obligation is likely to be repeated year after year after year at a time when our deficits are approaching $20 billion. Further, this measure seems to me to run entirely contrary to the California Constitution as amended by Proposition 209, which prevents this precise sort of racial quotas that is proposed in this measure. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that not only is this measure unconstitutional per California law, it comes at precisely the wrong time, with CalPERS now experiencing a massive shortfall in its investment portfolio. I urge a no vote.
Mr. Arambula.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. It's true that our public pension systems are in trouble, but that is not because minority managers are involved. In fact, I suspect that if minority managers had been more actively involved, the pension systems would not be in such great trouble as they are now. The biggest opportunities for economic development are in minority communities, and we have a term when we talk about foreign markets in other countries, emerging foreign markets. This bill, I think, will help identify emerging domestic markets, areas that have been overlooked by traditional investors, areas where there are great opportunities for economic development, for job creation, and I think this bill will help the public pension systems get right. It will help them identify opportunities where there are great possibilities for return to help them fulfill the fiduciary responsibility that they have to their members and make sure that all Californians help participate in a recovery. So I very strongly urge and I vote on this issue.
Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise in support of this issue and of this measure. CalPERS currently has on track to look to make sure that they get emerging managers, to make sure that they reach out to individuals who do their due diligence and bring in the best return for the money for the state of California. What this is going to do, it's going to put in statute to encourage them to do so. What we're talking about today is minority firms, about women firms who don't have the ability to do business with CalPERS. Now, just because they're a minority firm and then they're going to be given access to CalPERS doesn't mean that they're going to be able to get the contract immediately. CalPERS will do the due diligence to make sure that these entities perform well, and they're going to be based on their performance. So I stand in support of this measure.
Mr. Calderon.
Very briefly, Madam Speaker and members, I rise in support of this. if you take a look at the total amount of money managed by emerging managers, it's approximately $500 million, compared to the billions of dollars that CalPERS manages and oversees. Now, I happen to know of a very specific incident where an emerging manager it was decided not to continue with emerging manager on a particular portfolio investment, and PERS didn't go forward with it, even though CalSTRS wanted to continue. And you have to ask yourself, when CalSTRS thinks that this is a good investment manager and CalPERS thinks that this is not, and it happens to be a minority, then what other conclusion can you come to? What is it that STRS sees in this manager that CalPERS does not? And I would suggest at a minimum, it is the commitment of CalSTRS to employing emerging managers compared to the commitment of CalPERS. I think this is a good bill.
Mr. Swanson.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, I think that it's precisely because we want our retirement systems to be successful that this bill should go forward. Anyone that pays close attention to the portfolio of emerging managers and their performance of emerging managers, they will know that any retirement fund that avoids emerging managers is not really taking care of their complete fiduciary responsibility. So this is this is an effort for us to try to add diversity to asset management, which is very important to the success of the program. And so I think that it does not change any of the performance criteria that is necessary. Any of these managers have to perform or they no longer will be participating in the system. And so to try to identify this as some issue that deals with the question of race and not performance misses the whole point. It is about a diversity of assets, and everyone knows that if we don't diversify, you've seen what happens when you don't diversify your portfolios. And so I commend the author for the bill, and I think we should pass it out of this House. I urge an aye vote.
Mr. Bradford.
Madam Speaker, I too rise in support of AB 113. It is clear that this state, as well as this nation, needs diversity not only in its investment portfolios, but as you see, in allowing minority, women-owned, veteran-owned, small businesses to participate. This bill does just that. We have a select committee in this House on procurement, and its focus is to make sure that minority and small-owned businesses get a chance to do business with the state. This is another example of that need, so I commend the author for this bill.
Mr. Norby.
I rise in opposition, Madam Speaker. The term minority itself, I think, ought to be replaced with something more specific. It is not an anthropological term. It is an ever-changing political construct. At various times in our history, Italian Americans, others were considered minorities. Right now, there's a move among Arab Americans to be considered minority rather than white. All that's fine. I have one child at USC whose mother is from China. I don't know if he's a minority. I have 3 stepchildren whose mother's from Honduras. They don't know if they're minorities either. I think that with California itself becoming increasingly diverse, the terms are breaking down, and I'm not sure how you continue to categorize people into terms that are increasingly obsolete. Thank you.
Mr. Emerson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A question of the author.
Without objection.
Yeah. Mr. Davis, what is the position of CalSTRS and CalPERS on this legislation?
They have no identified position, and that includes no opposition.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I could very well talk to my colleagues, but I think it would be appropriate in closing to talk to the young people in the chambers today in the balcony. You might wonder what this debate is about. Perhaps you might think that perhaps we're trying to discuss issues from the 1950s of integration of people based upon race. And in some ways that might be relevant because we are talking about an issue here of inclusion. and it has great impact this time in the year 2010 on the economics of inclusion. It was mentioned by one of my colleagues about competence. Competence is not in question. Every person involved in this discussion is competent. And that was probably in the 1950s one of the concerns discussed then about integration based upon race in the schools. Would the minorities be relevant in terms of being able to keep up academically? But here today we're talking about, can emerging investing firms perform competently? Yes, they can. With regard to the issue of race, we never mentioned, at least as the author of the legislation, I never mentioned race. I specifically used the term emerging management firms. That is not identified by race. And finally, with regard to self-identification, I agree that there are minorities in this country, and in many ways in which the federal government practices its work, even in the census, people can self-identify. You are not compelled to identify yourself as someone else wants to identify you. In this country, based upon the Civil Rights Act of 1964, you have the inalienable right to define who you are. So even though if people discuss issues with regard to minority and women, if you don't want to define yourself as that, you have every constitutional right that any other citizen has. Nobody has a bigger coupon than someone else in America, even though oftentimes we think that we do. In conclusion, Madam Speaker and members of the State Assembly, this bill is simply about inclusion. Going back to reinvest in ourselves of people who are corporations, though they might be small, having an opportunity to be included in the way that we invest our monies in this state. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is not 1950s. This is, in fact, 2010. And the new frontier of accomplishment and challenge in this country is to include others economically. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 22. Measure passes. File item 114, AB 1918. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1918 by Assemblymember Davis, an act relating to telecommunications.
Mr. Davis.
Madam Speaker and members of the Assembly, this bill, AB 1918, deals with General Order 56, and it asks that companies that make over $25 million be included in the reporting in the Utilities for Public Utilities Commission reporting. Currently, the telephone company, the water company, and other utilities do a voluntary annual report on diversity, in this case, minority and women-owned businesses, to do business in their companies who practice in the state of California. In the past, the cellular phone companies, originally when this order was implemented, generated less than $25 million. Some 20 years later today, these companies, like their brother and sister utility companies, do generate over $25 million. And so we're asking that they join the culture of voluntarily reporting their vision for inclusion of women and minority-owned businesses in the way that they do business in the state of California. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 26. Measure passes. File items 115 through 120 pass and retain. File item 121, AB 2221. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2221 by Assemblymember Bell, an act relating to alcoholism or drug abuse or treatment.
Mr. Bell.
Madam Speaker and members, the Department of Alcohol and Drug Programs licenses residential treatment facilities that provide non-medical services to individuals who are working to overcome their addiction to alcohol or drugs. These facilities typically include education, group individual sessions, recovery or treatment planning, and detoxification services. Additionally, some facilities use a multidisciplinary team that often includes contracted physicians on a site to provide medical clearance and assist with other limited medical services such as physicals, other kinds of medical programs. Those in need of a broad spectrum of medical intervention use the services today of only one of 7 chemical dependency recovery hospitals in California, which are licensed by the Department of Public Health. Recently, due to the current statutory language, the Department of Alcohol and Drug Programs has been warning residential treatment facilities that they would lose their licenses if they continue to provide physician access. My bill would enable the department to license treatment facilities that utilize this mid-level care for patients on their sites without holding a separate license, and require that these facilities be accredited by a nationally recognized accrediting organization. This would ensure that patients who don't need intense and costly intervention provided by these the 7 hospitals to receive a full range of treatment options, including mid-level care. The bill passed out of Health and Appropriations with unanimous support and has minor and absorbable cost, and I urge an aye vote for this bill.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 64, no 0. Measure passes. File items 122 and 122 and 123 pass and retain. File item 124, AB 2296. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2296 by Assemblymember Saldana, an act relating to energy.
Ms. Saldana.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, AB 2296 will allow more Californians to participate in the California Solar Initiative by placing solar panels on adjacent properties if their homes do not allow for the position of solar in the immediate property area. We are working with the PUC, and I ask for your aye vote. We've been getting good support on this. I think as we move towards energy independence, it's important we give people more options for solar energy on adjacent properties to their own homes.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Come on. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 23. Measure passes. File item 125, AB 2325. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2325 by Assemblymember Liu, an act relating to mortgage foreclosure consultants.
Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This bill establishes greater protections for homeowners by providing that foreclosure consultant services explicitly include the audit of any mortgage loan on a residence in foreclosure. This bill addresses a new foreclosure relief scam that recently surfaced. Under this scam, homeowners are enticed into paying upfront fees for a forensic loan audit of their mortgage loan, purportedly to determine their lender's compliance with state and federal mortgage lending laws. Oftentimes, these audits are not needed, nor required, nor of any use. The California Attorney General recently partnered with the California Department of Real Estate and the State Bar of California to warn Californians to avoid these forensic loan audit scams. There's no opposition. I respect the request, and I vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 18. Measure passes. We would like to welcome some visitors from the Redwood Middle School in Miss Evans District of Napa. They're members of the school's leadership class, and the purpose today is to see Sacramento in action. The group of 36 students will observe the session from the gallery. Welcome. File item 126, AB 2340. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2340 by Assemblymember Monting, an act relating to employee rights.
We will pass temporarily. File item 127, pass and retain. File item 128, AB 1671. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1671 by Assemblymember Jeffries, an act relating to county government.
Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. AB 1671, based on some recommendations that came from members of the Local Government Committee and were taken in approps, this bill now has support on both sides. This bill is also supported by the California State Association of Counties and Regional Council of Rural Counties. There is no registered opposition. Respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 61, no 0. Measure passes. File item 127, pass and retain. File item 129, pass and retain. File item 130, AB 1900. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1900 by Assemblymember Skinner, an act relating to inmates.
Ms. Skinner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. My bill, Assembly Bill 1900, provides safer guidelines for pregnant inmates. Thousands of women go through California's county jails and detention facilities every year. And on average, about 5 to 7% of these women are pregnant at some point during their custody. Currently, many of our detention facilities use restraints and shackle pregnant women during transport or other times in ways that could cause a pregnant woman injury to the unborn child or even potentially miscarriage. AB 1900 clarifies a bill, AB 478, which was passed in 2005, which limited restraints for pregnant women during labor only. So the only limit that AB 478 put on was while the pregnant woman was in labor. What AB 1900 does is establish standards for our Correction Standards Authority for how pregnant women are restrained when being transported to and from a facility. I have addressed concerns from our Vice Chair of Public Safety, Assemblymember Hagman, and also the Chief Probation Officers by removing the suspected to be pregnant language. I also recently amended it to fix a Ledge Council drafting error which clarifies that this bill does not have a blanket ban on restraints for pregnant inmates. It simply states that if restraints are deemed necessary, that the least restrictive ones be used in order to protect the health of the unborn child. This bill has minor absorbable costs. Implementation coincides with the Correction Standards Authority's review of inmate treatment guidelines. It has received no votes and has the support of over 40 diverse organizations. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 64, no 0. Measure passes. Okay, members, we've got about 4 more bills to go and a few adjourned memories. We're going to go, members, back to file item 71, AB 2102. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2102 by Assemblymember Liu, an act relating to criminal procedure.
Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. California law limits video appearances to initial court appearances, arraignments, and pleas if the defendant elects under certain specific circumstances. With advances in video conferencing technology and equipment, video appearances by defendants are a more cost-effective alternative to in-person proceedings. This will save funds. They're much needed, and this bill will expand the use of video appearances in California court proceedings while protecting the defendant's rights. Our sponsors and I have worked and committed to continue to work with all interested stakeholders to reach an agreement on final language authorizing more video appearances. Respectfully request an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 61, no 0. Measure passes. Senate third reading. File items 131 through 133. Pass and retain. File item 134, SCR 91. Clerk will read.
Senate concurrent resolution 91 by Senator Steinberg relative to Autism Awareness Month.
Mr. Chesbro.
Madam Speaker, this resolution proclaims Autism Awareness Month and acknowledges the important work that's being done in California to raise the profile and awareness of autism. Facts on autism. Autism is the fastest growing serious developmental disability in California and the nation. It's now more prevalent than childhood cancer, juvenile diabetes, and pediatric AIDS combined. Autism now affects 1 in 110 children. Presently, California is adding 13 new children a day, 7 days a week, with full syndrome autism to our regional center system. The number of affected students has doubled over the past 4 years in most school districts. Thus, the autism spectrum disorder is indeed a critical problem that is impacting individuals, families, and communities throughout the state. This resolution stresses the need to identify children with autism as soon as possible and to begin early intervention treatment and supports an integrated, seamless, comprehensive, and effective manner. Further, the resolution recognizes and commends the parents and relatives of individuals with autism spectrum disorders for their sacrifices and for their dedication to their loved ones. The resolution has received bipartisan support and passed out of the Senate by a 34-0 vote. I would urge your aye vote.
Mr. Gaines.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise in support of this resolution. I've got a real issue in my district with a high incidence of autism, and so just want to thank Senator Steinberg for bringing this forward and also for working on some of the language. He worked on some of the language with our caucus, and I appreciate that. Urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Mr. Chesbro, would you like co-authors on this measure?
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Chesbro is asking for the first roll to be open for co-authors. Co-authors, members, the clerk will open the roll. This is for co-authors, members. Clerk will note that there are 63 co-authors. We can take a voice vote on this item. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The measure is adopted. File item 135, SCR 79 on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Senate concurrent resolution 79 with amendments by Assemblymember Mendoza.
Mr. Mendoza.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm here just to make some amendments to SCR 79, which recognizes June as Portuguese Heritage Month. Also, these amendments make a technical change and also as a co-author. Ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate on the amendments, we will take a roll call vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted, out to print, and back on file. File item 136, pass and retain. File item 137, SB 202. On the amendments, clerk will read.
Senate Bill 202 with amendments by Assemblymember Tran.
Mr. Tran.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, these amendments to SB 202 would clarify trustee duties to inform beneficiaries of the terms of a trust. Among other things, these amendments clarify that a beneficiary may request a copy of the terms of the trust at any time. They would also clarify that a trustee can and should provide a beneficiary with specific information the beneficiary has reasonably requested concerning a trust, rather than being compelled to provide a standard report containing statutorily specified information that may be neither relevant nor of the interest to the requesting beneficiary. I ask for your aye vote and that the bill be sent to print and placed back on file.
Seeing no further questions or debate, and without objection, we will take a voice vote on these amendments. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted, out to print, and back on file, and referred back to the Rules Committee.
I got to say something real quick. It's kind of important.
I request unanimous consent to re-refer file item 137, SB 202, Harmon by Tran, to the Rules Committee pursuant to Assembly Rule 97 without objection. Members, we are experiencing a little technical difficulty. The votes that are showing up on your computer are not accurate. However, the votes are being accurately recorded here at the clerk's desk. And we have copies of any votes that have been taken. If members would like to see it, if you could come up to the clerk's desk if you have any questions. The system is showing 2 vacancies. There are not 2 vacancies today on the floor. There's only 1 vacancy on the floor. So the floor computers are inaccurately showing 2 vacancies on the votes. But members' votes are being recorded. Members, business on the daily file, second reading, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1993 with amendments, 2496 with amendments, 2500 with amendments, 2111, 2157, 2229, 2249, 2307, 2322, 2515, 2538, 2543, 2642, 2778, 2788, 2791, 2793, 2597, 2637, 2676, 2685, 2696, 2699, 2733, 1690, 1715, 1766, 1777, 1932, 1964, 2012, 2018, 2084, 2110, 2133, 2136, 2390, 2396, 2485, 2551, 2592, 2327 with amendments, and Senate Bill 808.
All bills will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. We're going to go to adjourn in memories. Members, we are going to go back to vote on one more item. We're not quite ready for that. So we are going to go to adjourn in memories. Ms. Caballero? Is Ms. Caballero here? Ms. Caballero, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker and members. It gives me great sadness to adjourn in memory of a good friend of mine, Bob Cruz. A native California, Bob Cruz was born on June 15, 1936. He attended local Hollister schools and graduated from Hollister High in 1955, where he excelled in track and field, wrestling, baseball, and football. He was voted the first student athlete of the year in 1955, and therein began the tradition. Bob attended Stockton College on a football scholarship where he played football, baseball, and semi-pro baseball for the Stockton Ports. He graduated with an AA degree in 1957 from Stockton College. While growing up as a young man in Hollister, Bob Cruz worked at the Hawkins Family Ranch. He worked in the fields in San Benito County and Monterey, and it's an experience that left an indelible impression, one that he never forgot. In 1958, he married Marion at Sacred Heart Church in Hollister. They had 3 children, Robert, Valerie, and Larry, and now have 1 grandchild, Anton. Bob Cruz worked at McCormick Self until 1964 and then began working in the food processing business until he retired. But I knew Bob Cruz as a dedicated public servant. He served on the Hollister Planning Commission, the San Benito County Planning
Members,
Commission.
can we have a little attention?
The San Benito County Planning Commission, and was a 2-term San Benito County Supervisor. He spent many hours working with local organizations to promote youth programs and activities and was influential in bringing the YMCA to Hollister. He loved hunting, fishing, golfing. He was an avid 49er and Giants fan, and he was a big man with a big heart and a smile to match. Bob Cruz was a dedicated public servant who greeted everyone he met as if he was a long-lost friend. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the Cruz family, and I ask that we adjourn in his memory today.
Thank you, Ms. Caballero. Mr. Eng.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This coming Saturday afternoon, in the dark coolness of that day, we will be burying May To. But we will not be burying the dreams of hundreds of at-risk children that she helped to mentor, because she was the executive director of the Asian Youth Center in the San Gabriel Valley. And we will not be burying the dreams of hundreds of immigrants that came to the International Institute in East LA when she also worked there as a caseworker. And she will not be burying the love that her husband Alex had for her and her 2 fine children, Jonathan and Brian. So may her soul rest in peace, and may her dreams live on forever. I ask that we adjourn in memory of the beloved May To.
Thank you. Mr. Logue, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, I close in honor, and actually it's the mother of one of our Sergeant of Arms, Mr. Givens, and he comes from a prominent family in Yuba County, a long family that's been there for many, many years and has had a great positive impact on our community. The name is Hortense Givens. I rise to adjourn in memory of Hortense Givens, a longtime resident of Oregon House in my district. I join with her son, Jim Givens, of Special Services, and the rest of her family and friends in honoring her life and the accomplishments and legacy she left as a loving and caring individual. She and her husband spent the majority of their married life in Oregon House, California, where she devoted a great part of her life to discerning the needs of others, both in her family and the community. Over the years, distinguished herself in the community as the most gracious and charming lady. She will stand for those who knew her as a symbol of perpetual sunlight, for those who knew her only by her deeds as a testimony. She will live forever in the hearts of memories of all her loved ones in our community she loved and served. We honor her life with this adjourn in her memory. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Please bring the names forward to the desk. The remaining requests to adjourn in memory will be deemed read and printed in the journal. The session schedule is as follows. Friday, May 21st, no check-in session, no session. Monday, May 24th, floor session at 12 noon. Tuesday, May 25th, check-in session, floor session upon call of the speaker. Wednesday, May 26th, check-in session, floor session upon call of the speaker. After May 28th, no committee may meet, absent a joint Rule 61 waiver prior to June 7th, except to hear a bill that is re-referred to the committee pursuant to Assembly Rule 77.2. Budget Sub 4 will meet right after the adjournment here in room 437. Budget Sub 4 will meet immediately upon adjournment in room 437. Mr. Calderon, for what purpose do you rise?
To request unanimous consent to take up AB 2216 without reference to file.
Without objection?
I'm sorry.
AB 2163?
AB 2163.
Without objection. File item 51, AB 2163. This measure was removed from the second-day consent calendar earlier today. File item AB 2163. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2163 by Assemblymember Mendoza, an act relating to forest practices and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Mendoza.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I apologize, members, for keeping you here. It was not my doing. This bill was pulled out of consent. Basically, what this bill does is it merely allows THP timber harvest plans approved in the year 2010 and 2011 to be eligible for a two-year extension. This bill, a similar bill, was passed last year and signed by the governor. This people feel it's a little bit ambiguous and has multiple interpretations. So we're doing this follow-up bill as a cleanup measure. Has an urgency clause because the timber harvest plans are expiring this year. We need the landowners to have the opportunity to extend them because of the way the economy has been really been harsh to them. So with that, members, I would appreciate an aye vote.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. For the Republicans, this is a war effort. I just want to let you know, if you don't have your analysis, this is a support recommendation for the Republicans, and it has no votes to the committees on the Republicans. Thank you.
Mr. Gaines.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise in support. It's a big issue in my district. We had a lumber mill shut down last year, 160 jobs lost. Anything that we can do to provide relief would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Mr. Gilmore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, very quickly, I too rise in support of AB 2163. Let's look back at the year of 2000 when we had about 130 mills in the state of California. Unfortunately, we're down to about 37 mills in this state. We're importing a lot of our lumber from Oregon, Washington, and Canada as well. This is about jobs in California. I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Chesbro.
Yes, I rise in support of this bill. We had a very contentious debate last year in passing legislation. It wound up passing and being signed by the governor. We passed this bill out of my committee as a cleanup to last year's legislation. I do not believe it is a substantial departure from last year's product, and I would urge your aye vote.
Ms. Yamada.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I simply rise to clarify the reason that I removed this bill from consent. I don't wish to debate the substance of the bill. It is just a matter of courtesy, and I wanted to apologize to Mr. Mendoza if there was any miscommunication about our intent. When a bill is on consent, if you wish to vote no, this is what you have to do. So thank you very much for the opportunity to just cast my vote as I would have. Thank you.
Mr. Mendoza, would you like to close?
Just members, we worked in good faith last year to work a good deal with all the chairs of each committee. We worked it out. Everything's fine. This year is just a cleanup measure, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 59, noes 3. Measure passes. 59-3 on the urgency. Okay, members, I'm ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Calderon moves, Mr. Hagman seconds, that this House stands adjourned until Monday, May 24th at 12 noon. Quorum calls lifted. Sorry, members, one more announcement. Public Safety Committee will be meeting in the Rules Room right now. Public Safety Committee will meet in the Rules Room right now.